The morning I got fired, my keycard still worked. That's how I know they expected me to take it quietly. When the elevator doors opened on our floor, it smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner, same as always. I'd landed from a 2-day client trip less than an hour before, dropped my suitcase at home, grabbed a shower that barely counted, and came straight in. I remember actually jogging the last few steps down the hallway because I was sure someone had messed something up on the project while I was gone. After I returned to the office, I hurried to my old desk. I say old now. Back then, it was still my desk in my head. Only it wasn't there. Where my dual monitors and the ugly fake plant used to be, there was just an empty patch of carpet and a faint square of dust on the wall where my whiteboard had hung. The cable trunking still ran along the floor, ending in a stupid little plastic cap, like someone had bandaged the spot where my job used to live. For a second, I honestly thought I'd gotten off on the wrong floor. Then I saw my chair. It was parked by the printer station, a sad blue orphan with a yellow sticky note on the back that just said, "Free." Morning, man. Eli from IT was standing there, holding a bundle of network cables. He did that thing where someone's eyes hit your face, then slide away like they touched something hot. "Morning," I said. My voice sounded normal. Inside my chest, everything dropped about 3 inches. Did they move my station? He hesitated just long enough for me to get my answer. "HR wanted to see you when you got in," he muttered. "They said to send you straight there." There's a particular kind of silence that happens in offices when something bad is going on. Emails still ping, phones still ring, but every conversation is half whispered. As I walked toward HR, I could feel that silence folding around me like plastic wrap. People were definitely looking. Nobody was really looking. I passed Martin's glass office. My manager, the guy who always called me Rockstar when the client was on the line and Resource when he thought I couldn't hear. He was inside, standing too straight, hands jammed into his pockets, pretending to study something on his monitor. Kelly was perched in the guest chair, ankle over knee, like she was waiting for a meeting that didn't involve me anymore. Neither of them looked up. HR is at the far end of the corridor in our building, past the good coffee machine and the motivational posters about teamwork. I remember that stupid poster with the rowers on it. "We're stronger together," right before I opened the door. "Grant," said Melissa, the HR manager. Her smile tried to reach her eyes and gave up halfway. "Can you take a seat?" There was a man in a navy suit sitting beside her. I'd seen him maybe twice in 3 years. Corporate legal. He didn't bother to smile. That's when my brain stopped pretending this was about my desk. "Sure," I said and sat. She had a manila envelope in front of her, perfectly aligned with the edge of the desk. I noticed her hands were shaking just a little. Mine weren't. That surprised me. "So," she began, taking a breath, "as you know, the company has been going through some restructuring. After reviewing our current needs and organizational goals, we've made the difficult decision to eliminate your position, effective immediately." It was like she'd hit play on a recording. Every word came out pre-measured, like she was reading a script printed on the inside of her eyelids. "I just got back from a client pitch," I said, "the one that's supposed to close Q3. Did you restructure them too?" Melissa flinched. The lawyer cleared his throat. "This decision isn't a reflection of your performance," she said quickly. "We value your contributions, but due to budget constraints and a strategic realignment, your role is no longer aligned with the vision." I finished for her. I had written those exact words in 3 different termination letters for other people when they didn't want to pay severance. Funny how fast the language comes back to you. The lawyer slid the envelope toward me. "Inside you'll find your separation package, NDA, and information about your benefits," he said. "We can give you 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings with a member of HR present." "In case I steal the staplers," I said. Nobody laughed. Here's the thing. Being fired is less like a punch and more like a car accident. You expect an impact, some big dramatic bang, but what you actually get is a series of small, stupid details your brain chooses to focus on instead. The pen on her desk had our logo on it. There was a coffee ring on the corner of the severance papers. Someone had spelled my last name wrong on the top sheet, missing one letter, like I was already half erased. "Do you have any questions?" Melissa asked. I had a lot. Why was my access card used to download my project files at 8:17 p.m. yesterday while I was on a plane over Kansas? Why was Kelly CC'd on the last 3 client emails I'd sent right before I left, even though she'd never touched the account before? Why did Martin stop asking me to join the senior calls 2 months ago, but somehow still have my slide deck on the screen every time? But they weren't questions I needed answered. Not by them, anyway. "How long has this been planned?" I asked instead. Her eyes flickered for half a second toward the lawyer. That was my answer, too. "As I said, we've been reviewing." "So longer than the 2 days I've been gone?" I cut in. She swallowed. "These decisions are made at a higher level, Grant. It isn't personal." "It's never personal. Until it is." I opened the envelope, flipped through the paperwork. 2 weeks' pay, payout for unused vacation, health insurance through the end of the month, standard NDA about proprietary information and non-disparagement. The non-disparagement clause was longer than the section about my benefits. "Do you need time to look this over?" the lawyer asked. "I've seen it before," I said. "Different names, same font." I didn't sign. Not yet. I slid the papers back into the envelope, closed it carefully like it was something fragile. "I'll take my 30 minutes, I said. "Then I'll send this to someone who actually works for me." Melissa blinked. "You mean a lawyer?" "If I meant my cat, I would have said my cat," I answered. My voice still sounded calm. That helped. People expect you to yell. It makes them feel justified. She stood up slowly. "I'll ask Jenna to accompany you to your workstation." "My workstation doesn't exist," I reminded her. "But sure. Let's go look at the patch of carpet where my career used to live." Out in the hallway, the silence tightened. I could feel people not looking at me as we walked past. Someone's keyboard clacked too hard. A phone rang twice and went unanswered. At the empty space where my desk wasn't, there was already a cardboard box waiting with my name on a label. At least they'd spelled it right this time. Inside were my personal things. The photo of my brother and me at the baseball game. The crooked ceramic mug my nephew made. The little Spider-Man figurine that used to sit on my monitor. They'd even wrapped my plant spot in paper so it wouldn't spill dirt everywhere. Thoughtful. "Did you pack this?" I asked Jenna. She shook her head. "Facilities," she said quietly. "They did it this morning." Of course they did. They'd had time. I put the photo on top, then the mug. Spider-Man went in last, face up. I didn't take any notebooks, any printed reports, any of the project binders with the colored tabs. Those were the companies on paper. The work inside them wasn't. Not entirely, but I'd already taken care of that part before my trip. "Do I need an escort to the elevator too?" I asked. "It's procedure," Jenna said. She looked uncomfortable, and I believed she actually was. "I'm sorry, Grant." "It's not your apology to give," I replied. We walked to the elevator in that weird, heavy quiet. As we passed Martin's office again, I saw movement in the glass. He was on the phone, one hand over his mouth, watching me without really watching me. Kelly sat behind him now in my old chair, flipping through a printout of my latest report like it had always belonged in her hands. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside with my box, set it down between my shoes, and stared at the closing gap of stainless steel as it swallowed the only job I'd had for the last 6 years. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it right away. Instead, I watched my reflection in the brushed metal. Same face, same tired eyes, tie a little crooked. I thought I'd feel panic or rage, maybe humiliation. What I actually felt, standing there with a cardboard box and a manila envelope, was something closer to a clean, cold line being drawn. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, my hands had stopped shaking before they even had the chance to start. When I stepped out into the lobby, the air felt colder than it should have. Maybe it was just me, or maybe it was the way the receptionist avoided eye contact, like I was walking out covered in crime scene tape. I didn't stop. I pushed through the revolving doors, crossed the sidewalk, and sat on the low stone wall that bordered the fountain. The water kept doing its calm, looping dance, completely indifferent to the fact that my entire life had just been erased upstairs. I finally checked my phone. 3 messages, 2 from unknown numbers, 1 from a client. The first unknown number was automated HR garbage. Return of all company property is mandatory. The second was from a number I recognized but hadn't saved. Kelly. Kelly, they didn't want me to tell you. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have words, but because replying meant accepting her place in this. And I wasn't ready to do that yet. The client message was short, just 1 sentence. Grant, did you land okay? Need to discuss next steps. Call me when you're in. I exhaled slowly. They hadn't told the client either. Of course they hadn't. I stood, picked up the cardboard box, and walked back inside. Not to go back upstairs, I wasn't that naive, but because there was one more place I needed to go. The 5th floor bathrooms. More specifically, the one behind the conference center where nobody ever went, unless there was an all-hands meeting. Inside the far stall, taped behind the metal panel of the toilet paper dispenser, was a flash drive. Mine. I'd put it there 3 weeks ago, the day I realized something was off. The day Martin accidentally forwarded me an internal thread that mentioned a resource shift plan. Q3, right below a list of salaries. Mine was highlighted. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. I pulled the panel open, pocketed the drive, closed everything like it had never been touched, and walked out of the building for the second and final time. That was the beginning, but it wasn't even close to the real story. At home, I dropped the box on my kitchen table, sat down, and let the silence settle. My apartment felt too clean, too organized, like everything was waiting for instructions I didn't have anymore. Then anger finally found me. Not loud anger, not shouting, not throwing, but a slow, simmering clarity that felt like a wire being pulled tight. I opened my laptop and checked my personal email. 15 unread messages, all from the last 2 days. 4 from the client. 3 from internal team members asking about deadlines. 2 from vendors needing approval. 6 from Martin. I opened the most recent one. Martin, touch base soon. Client was unimpressed with your response time during travel. We may need to restructure some responsibilities when you're back. Reminder, please CC Kelly on all outgoing documents this week. There it was, the setup, the rewrite of history. He hadn't even waited for me to land. Scrolling further up the chain, I found something worse, something that punched in slow motion. An email sent last night at 8:17 p.m. from my account. I opened it. The message thanked the client for their patience with onboarding new team members and said that Kelly would be taking over communication moving forward. My jaw clenched. They'd used my login, not guessed, used. Only 3 people had the kind of admin access needed to do that. Martin, one senior IT lead, and Kelly. A cold, clean wave of realization washed over me. They hadn't planned my firing for days. They'd prepared it for months, and I'd walked right into it. I leaned back in my chair and let out a laugh, a short, humorless one, the kind that doesn't sound like a laugh at all. But that was just the beginning. Around 3 p.m., my phone rang again. HR, of course, I answered. Hi, Grant. It's Melissa. I just wanted to confirm you received. You used my login, I said. A long pause, paper shuffling, a small, nervous inhale. I'm not sure what you mean. You know exactly what I mean. Grant, she began, switching to her soft threat voice. I understand this is a difficult moment, But I need to remind you that the NDA, I haven't signed anything. That silenced her. I'll be reviewing the paperwork with legal, I continued, and if my credentials were accessed without permission, your NDA is the least of your problems. Grant, she said again, this time too quickly, this is all standard procedure. No, I said calmly. This was orchestrated. She exhaled shakily. I suggest refraining from accusations you can't support. Oh, I can support them. My fingers tapped the outline of the flash drive in my pocket. But we'll talk about that later. For now, Melissa, I won't be signing your NDA. Not today, not ever. And if anyone from legal needs me, they can reach out through my attorney. I ended the call. For a moment, the room felt too quiet, like everything had paused to hear what I'd do next. I already knew. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket, plugged it in, and waited for the folder to load. Inside were emails, backups, drafts, screenshots, timestamps, everything that proved who really built the project they were trying to steal. Everything that proved I owned a part of it, legally. I closed the lid of my laptop and sat in the stillness. They thought firing me would be the end of it. They thought I'd leave quietly, embarrassed, grateful for severance that barely covered rent. They thought wrong. Because they didn't know the one thing that should have terrified them most. I hadn't shown them the real consequences yet, and I didn't know it at that moment. But that decision, not signing their NDA, not folding, not disappearing, would cost them everything. I didn't sleep that night, not because of panic that had burned off hours earlier, but because my mind was finally brutally clear. Every lie, every meeting, every accidental oversight of the last 3 months lined up like pins in a bowling alley, and I was done being the ball. It was my turn to roll something back at them. At 7:12 a.m., I sent the first email, not to HR, not to Martin, not to anyone in the building. I sent it directly to the client's VP, the one who'd flown me out for the pitch, the one who'd personally requested me for the project, because in his words, you're the only one who actually listens. Subject line, clarification regarding project transition. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't rant. I didn't even mention the firing. I simply attached every version of the proposal I had authored, every timeline and workflow diagram with my initials, every request the client had made that I'd fulfilled, and the email sent from me last night, with metadata showing it wasn't me. The last line of my message was polite, neutral, and devastating. Please confirm whether you approved transferring communication to a representative you have not met. I hit send. Then I sat back and waited. The answer came 13 minutes later. Short. Cold. We did not approve anything. This is deeply concerning. I will handle this immediately. I almost felt bad for Martin. Almost. At 8:03 a.m., the second email went out. This one to the company's legal department. Not the in-house legal who sat beside HR. No, I went over them. Straight to the corporate counsel whose signature sits on every major contract the company has ever signed. I attached 3 documents. 1, the section of my employment agreement guaranteeing ownership credit for original project designs. 2, the entire Slack export of conversations showing Martin rewriting my work. 3, the data logs proving my account was accessed after hours. At the bottom I wrote, I will be issuing a formal request for all access logs unless this matter is resolved appropriately. That's corporate language for, I know exactly what you did. Fix it before I make this public. By 8:40 a.m., the ripple was already visible. I saw it in real time because a friend from accounting, the quiet guy who everyone forgets can see everything, texted me, accounting guy, dude, something's happening upstairs. 4 suits just walked into Martin's office. Kelly's crying. I stared at the message, feeling not joy, not triumph, something sharper. Vindication. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. At 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. Blocked number. I answered anyway. Grant. It was the corporate counsel himself. Smooth voice, the kind that normally only talks to board members. "I've reviewed your email. I'd like to discuss this matter quickly to avoid escalation." "Good idea," I said. He cleared his throat. "We were unaware of any unauthorized access to your credentials." "You were unaware because someone didn't want you aware." Silence on his end. A heavy one. Then, "We'll be conducting an internal investigation. I would appreciate your cooperation." "I'll cooperate," I said, but not quietly. Another pause. Longer this time. "Understood." That should have been enough. It wasn't. Because the more I dug into the drive, the more I realized something. They hadn't just stolen my work. They'd lied to the client about delivery dates I'd never agreed to. They'd promised features that weren't possible. They'd built an entire fantasy version of the project timeline to justify kicking me out and promoting Kelly cheaply. And they'd done it under my name. The perfect scapegoat. Until he didn't stay quiet. I opened the folder labeled Meeting Recordings, a precaution I'd started months ago when Martin began contradicting himself every other week. The audio files weren't dramatic. No screaming, no confessions, but they were damning. Martin instructing the team to trim Grant out of the process. Kelly telling a junior analyst to copy-paste his old designs and change the headers. A call where they openly discussed redirecting the client's loyalty. I listened to 10 minutes of it before stopping. My hands were completely steady. That wasn't anger. That was resolve. At noon, the third message came in, this time from the client VP again. "We are pausing all communication with your company until further notice. Please call me directly." I did, and what he said next changed everything. "Grant, I'll be blunt," he said. "We signed the contract because of you, not your firm. If they removed you, that's their problem. But they're not touching this project without your involvement." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm no longer with the company." "Then we want you as a consultant," he said immediately. "Independent. Higher rate. Direct communication." For a moment, everything went quiet in my apartment, except my heartbeat. "Let me think about it," I managed. "Take an hour," he said, "because after that, I'm pulling the entire deal." I thanked him and hung up, and that was when another realization hit me. Clean, heavy, irreversible. Losing me wouldn't just hurt the company, it would break them. At 3 p.m., my phone lit up like a slot machine. 20 missed calls, 6 voicemails, HR, legal, unknown numbers, a text from Martin. "We need to talk. Urgent." I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I walked to my bedroom, opened the drawer of my nightstand, and pulled out the professionally bound portfolio I kept for emergencies. My full project archive, the one they never knew existed. I placed it on the table next to my laptop. Then I wrote one more email. Not to them. To a competitor. A company that had tried to poach me twice. Subject line: availability for discussion. I attached my resume, my portfolio, and the client's message stating they wanted me, not my employer. I didn't send threats. I didn't brag. I didn't ask for favors. I simply sent the truth. 2 hours later, the competitor replied, "Can you come in tomorrow morning? Our CEO would like to meet you personally." My hands finally shook then, not from fear, from the quiet, rising understanding of what was happening. Everything they tried to take from me was about to become the thing that buried them. And then, silence. The kind that means something's gone wrong. I woke up before my alarm the next morning. Not from stress, that had burned out days ago, but from a steady, grounded calm I barely recognized as my own. The kind of calm you feel when the storm has already passed, and all that's left is to walk through the broken branches and decide what to rebuild. I showered, shaved, put on the only suit I owned that still felt like mine, and drove across town to the competitor's office. Their building was tall, glassy, modern, the kind of place my old company always pretended to be, but never was. The receptionist greeted me by name. The CEO shook my hand himself. The VP of product had already printed my portfolio. They didn't ask why I left my old job. They didn't ask for gossip. They didn't make me justify anything. They asked me what I wanted, and then offered more. By the time I walked out of the building, sunlight warming the back of my neck, I was holding an offer letter with a higher salary, better benefits, and ownership credit on projects I hadn't even built yet. It felt surreal, not dramatic, not triumphant, just right. At 1:14 p.m., while I was eating takeout noodles at my kitchen table, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. It rang again. I let it ring again. Then a voicemail came through. A second, a third. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I opened my email, and there it was. From Corporate Counsel. Subject. Request for immediate call. The message was frantic in the way only corporate emails get when the building is metaphorically on fire, but no one is allowed to admit it. Client terminated communication allegations under investigation. Unauthorized access. Confirmed leadership restructuring underway. Request to resolve misunderstandings quickly. Request for clarification. Request for collaborative conversation. Then the final line. We would like to discuss the possibility of reinstating your position. I stared at that sentence for a long, long moment. Reinstating, not apologizing, not compensating, not acknowledging, reinstating, as if I'd been a misplaced stapler. I typed a reply, 8 words. Thank you. I have accepted another offer. And hit send. A minute later, another email arrived, this time from HR. Melissa, the woman who couldn't meet my eyes when she handed me the envelope. Grant, can we please talk? Things have escalated beyond expectation. Leadership regrets how this was handled. I didn't reply. Some things don't need answers. By late afternoon, news had leaked internally. My friend from accounting texted me again. Accounting guy. Dude, it's chaos. Client pulled all funding. The board is furious. Legal is interviewing everyone. Martin got escorted out. Kelly too. It's over. I stared at the message. Martin, the man who loved calling me resource. Kelly, who used my login without blinking. Gone. I wasn't happy. Not exactly. It was something cleaner. Justice without applause. Around 6 p.m., the sun was setting in a soft orange band across my apartment wall when another message came in. This time from a personal number I recognized, but hadn't saved. Kelly, I hope you're happy. Everything is falling apart. They're blaming us for breach of protocol. I don't know what to do. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, but because the person she was talking to didn't exist anymore. The man who carried other people's mistakes? Gone. The man who covered for colleagues because it was easier? Gone. The man who let things slide until they slid him out the door? Gone. They thought firing me would turn me into a ghost. Instead, it turned me into someone solid. The next day, I signed the contract with the new company. The pen felt heavier than it should. My hand steadier than it had any right to be. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph. It was peace. Real, quiet peace. The kind that doesn't announce itself but settles slowly, like dust after a demolition. And that night, sitting in my living room with no cardboard boxes, no panic, no humiliation, just the soft hum of the fridge and the faint city sounds through the window, something finally clicked into place. They hadn't fired me. Not really. They'd freed me. They'd cut the last tie holding me in a place that was already sinking. They'd shown me exactly who they were and who I could become without them. They'd given me the push I never would have taken on my own. A strange gift, but a gift all the same. I leaned back on the couch, hands behind my head, and let out the slowest, deepest breath I'd taken in months. No questions left. No unfinished business. No weight I still had to carry. Just me, my new job, my clean start, my silence, the good kind, a life that finally fit. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.